was at that moment I thought, I've got to be Catholic. We call it strategic doing. Go and try, go and do, because you're going to go 5 times back and forth, figuring out, trying, failing, and then getting it down while these folks are still sitting in the room trying to work it out. I shouldn't be here. I feel more free and liberated to just say, Lord, what do you ask of me?
From conversion and Eucharistic revival to innovation and leadership, Jason Shanks shares his journey from Methodism to Catholicism, and what nearly dying from COVID taught him about life, leadership, and Jesus in the Eucharist. Welcome to the 11 Talents Podcast.
Jason Shanks, thank you for joining me today.
What a pleasure. It's great.
I want to just jump right into it. You were a Methodist, converted to the Catholic faith, and now you are the one that is leading the effort to bring our Eucharistic Jesus back to the Catholic faith in terms of making sure that everybody understands what the real presence of the Eucharist is. That's got to be kind of mind-boggling for some people.
Mind-boggling for me. I mean, God has a complete sense of humor. I don't know how to explain it, really.
What do Methodists believe when it comes to the Eucharist, or what they do, and then what do they think of Catholics and what we do? Yeah,
so interesting. So I would put Methodists down. We would go to a Methodist church when we would go on Sunday mornings. Often my family was watching Robert Schuller, The Hour of Power, on Sunday mornings in our jammies and our living room, right? My dad was raised Catholic, but had sort of drifted from the faith. And, but by and large, for the majority of my life, I looked at the Eucharist as symbolic, figurative. This was representative of what they did, the Last Supper, but wasn't really truly Jesus. I can remember my freshman year in college, I had a roommate who was Catholic, and we got in a debate on the Eucharist. And I made an argument that he was a cannibalist. And he would debate me, and we'd debate the Eucharist back and forth. This is how sort of against it I was. He is now a Presbyterian pastor, and I'm leading the National Eucharistic Revival. I mean, who can explain this? But it took me many years in college of study. I was involved in a group called Campus Crusade for Christ, which is now Cru today in the Protestant world. This is a precursor to even Focus. So Curtis Martin and a lot of them come from the same crusade, Cru background. Very evangelical, Protestant, non-denominational, would almost, I would argue, a little bit of anti-Catholicism. They would convert a lot of Catholics. And it took me many years in there to study the Bible, study my faith, learn how to share my faith, till I eventually got to a Bible study and was sort of shook into the core on some of the total depravity teachings that they were giving us with John Calvin. And I started reinvestigating everything. And one of the areas I investigated was John chapter 6. And it is reading John chapter 6 that it was like the scales fell from my eyes, where in that scripture, as you well know, he repeats himself 3 times. You must eat my flesh and drink my blood. And he does it 3 times. People leave. People are like, this is hard teaching. How can we take this? To the very end, he looks at them and says, do you also want to go? And for whatever reason, because for many years in the Protestant world, I didn't see it. I when I said the Our Father, I thought they were talking about dinner. Give us this day our daily bread. Didn't ever think that
it's just a symbol.
It was just symbolic, right? And it's funny, right? In John 6, the Protestant claim a lot, at least when I was going through it, was the Catholics don't read the Bible literally, right? In this case, the Catholics read this passage very literally, and it's the Protestant read that is more of the figurative one. And so I went in it with that viewpoint. I went in it looking, well, if this is figurative and this is symbolic, why isn't Jesus correcting them? Or why isn't why does he double down on this? And why doesn't he repeat himself? Well, maybe he'll explain it to them out. He talked to the larger group, and when he gets to the core, Peter, James, and the boys, he's going to really break it down. And no, for a 3rd time. And it was at that moment where I had already researched purgatory and the saints and Mary and a host of other things that you have to sort of go through in your journey of conversion. But it was at that moment I thought, I've got to be Catholic. But it took me 2 years after that to actually become Catholic.
So the Bible study during college or after?
During college.
During college, okay.
Yeah, there was this. So as a lot of our campuses, they'll do small group Bible studies. In this particular case, they were discussing a theological concept in the Protestant world called total depravity with John Calvin. So this was a Calvinist perspective that we are 100% totally evil. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense to me, because if that's the case, then I either depraving Scripture as I read it, because I'm reading it through a lens of depravity, or what you're saying is that the Holy Spirit is guiding me to my own individual truth, which also doesn't sit well with me. And obviously, the Catholic Church has an explanation for all of that.
Right.
But it took me on a journey to say, I need to go back and figure out why did we as Protestants leave? So I went through the Reformation, I went through Martin Luther, I started looking into the issues, but then I went back to the early church, right? Isn't it interesting that when you look at Acts, Pentecost, they receive the Holy Spirit, they go out, they say and they baptize, right? Repent and baptize. And I thought, why are they baptizing? Why is that so important? Why aren't I just accepting Jesus? They're baptizing. And then what do? They go and break bread. And I thought, why was it so important that they go and break bread after the Holy Spirit and all these baptisms? And again, you see in the early church, the Eucharist, the continuation of of Holy Thursday, of the Last Supper. But again, as a Protestant, I thought this was all hocus pocus. I thought it was a corruption. I thought, this was, that the real church is what you would find, the true, simple church, not all this smells and bells and Catholicism. That happened 300 years later. Yeah. And as you even go to the book of Acts, as you read the early fathers, the saying is, as a student of history ceases to be Protestant or, becomes Catholic. And in my case, that's exactly what happened. So no one could be, I remember dating a girl in college who was Catholic, telling her, if we ever got married, I'm not raising my kids Catholic. I want nothing to do with this. And so the idea that I am working with the bishops of the United States, last year we had a pilgrimage from Indianapolis to Los Angeles. And we were at what is now the Christ Cathedral in Orange County. And we brought the pilgrimage around the grounds of Christ Cathedral. And there was a huge crowd, and the monstrance was walking around as part of this National Eucharistic pilgrimage. And I remember my friend EWTN and Monty Alvarado was interviewing me. And on air, I broke down crying because it just touched me and moved me that here was this boy who was sitting in his jammies watching Robert Schuller as a kid who didn't believe in the real presence, didn't have any devotion, understanding, or reverence for it. Later thought Catholics were cannibalists, who's now standing at what was the Crystal Cathedral, now Christ Cathedral, and helping bring this pilgrimage around the grounds in this moment of adoration. And it's unbelievable to me. It's a grace in my life that I can't.
That's beautiful. So you did a lot of different church work until you landed at OSV and our Sunday Visitor Institute, to be exact. And you really brought something new to OSV called the OSV Institute with their innovation, right?
Right.
The church used to always be, I guess that's a weird way to say it, but the church was on the forefront of being entrepreneurs, hospitals, art, music, you name it, education.
Right.
We were on the front lines, and we've seen that dissipate, and you want to bring it back, or wanted to bring it back with OSV. Tell me a little bit about the Institute.
Yeah, so my sort of my background, even in college, was I was sort of an entrepreneur for Jesus. So even when I was working in the university as an evangelical Protestant, I did a lot of things on campus to try to further the gospel, but use the systems and structures of the university to do that. So we would run lots of interesting campaigns and ministries to make that happen. So as I became Catholic and started getting more involved in the parishes and the youth groups, I started starting certain things up. Like I started Catholic Youth Summer Camp, which is now Damascus.
Yeah.
I started doing new and interesting things at the parish level as I worked for a parish. I got my master's in theology and then ultimately also got a master's in business through Notre Dame and nonprofit administration. So then what was occurring in my career was I was being asked to come into different groups, entities that needed sort of renovated, rejuvenated, built. And so I had to do a lot of entrepreneurial practices. As I got to OSV and they had this sort of foundation that did philanthropy work, we started giving out grants, doing these different things, and we started measuring impact, measuring numbers, as well as given my background and just understanding the trends and where things were happening. I was looking at the numbers and seeing decline here, decline there. Even when I worked at a diocese level in Toledo, Ohio for a while, there was a lot of merging of parishes and closing of parishes. So I started just looking at it and feeling like, you know what we are doing as church is not working, but we keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And we keep funding the same things over and over again that aren't really moving the needle. What we need is more of an entrepreneurial approach, going all the way back to the apostles who had to build this from scratch, right? This isn't much different than what you hear now. People talking about not just a missionary mindset, but an apostolic one. Mm-hmm. We're in the age of an apostolic time. I was using entrepreneurial ideas and principles to think about how do we pilot, how do we test, how do we fail fast, how do we try. And I feel like sometimes even on a parish level, diocesan level, we get stuck in just continual strategic planning and continual pastoral planning, but no one's actually trying, coming back, failing, coming back, listening to the people, figuring out what does the market want from X, Y, or Z. Mm-hmm. So we also thought there was a lot of capital or dollars and ideas that were further along or they were more established and provable, but there wasn't a lot in the, say, seed capital, seed funding. And so we took what was the OSV Institute and created the OSV Institute for Innovation. And we created what was called the OSV Innovation Challenge. We created OSV Talks, which was sort of like TED Talks for Catholics.
TED Talks and then like a Catholic Shark Tank kind of
Shark
thing,
Tank,
right?
which was the Innovation Challenge. And we had thousands of ideas.
As CEO of the OSV Institute, though, in this Innovation Challenge, I mean, what were you seeing from these entrepreneurs? Were you invigorated and inspired by them, by bringing new ideas? And what's your kind of reflection on these people that had to start on their own because in their current companies or whatever, they couldn't thrive, or perhaps it was in their diocese that, did you see a lot of that kind of squashing or the ideas like, that's not our thing. Our thing is to concentrate on the diocese or just to concentrate on the parish. But you were now giving them a platform to say, hey, this actually is a good idea. Like,
yeah, I would say, and I would say this backed up by fact, that the best ideas that we received and the more ideas we received were not coming from dioceses and parishes. They were coming from people who felt hemmed in and not supported at diocese and parish, and were more in the area of either for-profit or nonprofit ideas for the church. That's where they could run and they could thrive. That's where I think there is a lot of work to be done from a parish and diocesan structure to hire particular people, but give them permission to make mistakes and to fail and to try, that are more entrepreneurially minded. Typically in those settings, we want to manage change. We don't want some bold ideas, and typically they're out of there. For me, it gave me a lot of hope. Yeah. It gave me a lot of hope. People were trying to disrupt different things, and we had a lot of courses and classes and structure. Even how do I go talk to my bishop? How do I get permission for X? And that all had to be trained and taught. Right, especially as they were in the Catholic space.
I love the mantra, make mistakes quicker. And I think that not enough of us, especially when we're risk adverse and we're running organizations, especially nonprofits, and you probably have experienced this with nonprofits that aren't necessarily run as businesses. I like to think that Legatus is a little bit more on the business side, given our founder, but to try things and really put it out there, make risky decisions, and find out if it's going to work, and have the parameters to be able to make some course correction if that is the case.
I mean, typically, the Legatus, right? Most of the founders of these businesses, if you go and you sit with them and you talk to them, they had an idea, they started, they tried, oh, that worked, that didn't work, let's go more that way, let's reduce. And they, as they navigate, eventually it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. And then they go back and they look back and say, okay, what is our values? But they're looking back at what happened previously. Who are we? They're asking all those questions way after they're down the road, right? They are, but we do it the opposite, right? You think of any nonprofit, parish, church, typically what happens is they're like, we need a strategy. And they'll get in these rooms and they're like, well, what's our vision and what's our mission and what's our values and what's this and what's our objectives and what da-da-da. We call it strategic doing. Go and try, go and do, because you're going to go 5 times back and forth, figuring out, trying, failing, and then getting it down while these folks are still sitting in the room trying to work it out. That is sort of what's beautiful about the revival, the Congress, and the pilgrimage, because as luck would have it, and this is why I ended up leaving OSV Institute, was I thought this was the most impactful idea I've seen, right? To the point that I was like, I am all in, that I'm going to leave all of this that we're doing over here, because I think this is making the biggest impact that I've seen in my lifetime, right? And the boldness of these bishops to say, let's go try in a stunning way. Yeah. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And you see that in the pilgrimage all the time. So you see these bishops doing big, let's take Jesus up in a helicopter.
Yeah.
Really?
Or in a plane and fly over the city.
Everybody thinks we're litigious and risk averse, and we're taking Jesus, and the monsters on a boat around the Statue of Liberty. Yeah. Again, entrepreneurial mindset, in my view, that has been super powerful. And I think what it's done is it's given the church life and energy and hope again. Yeah. And as you said earlier, the Catholic Church built hospital systems. We built notation of music. We created this video during the Innovation. And in the video, he talks about, we even put hops in beer. Yeah. Right? The church changed? Does big things.
What changed after that? Like, did we just get lazy and just relax and not be, why did we have such a phase of time when we just did not innovate and we didn't, was it a change in the hierarchy of the church? Was it a change in, the new world?
I think, right, what you see, and if you look in the history of the church, I'm just doing some preliminary view of it now, you see these sort of waves and trends of ebbs and flows of times of almost institutional stagnation, and then reformers and renewalists and innovators come in, right? You can think about when Francis rebuilt my church. You can think about the saints that emerged after the Second Vatican Council, lots of confusion. But what emerged is lots of Catholic apostolic activity in the United States, right? Probably not much through the religious orders, but through the Augustine Institutes and the relevant radios and the EWTNs and the Legatus and the Ave Marias and the things that were formed.
The new evangelization,
right? And then you had John Paul II and these guys, right? These popes give us a catechism, get us clarity, call us forward as lay people in the areas of new evangelization. John Paul II say, let's push out into the deep. Let's not be afraid. So I do think you are on the cusp of what I would say is early signs that a revival may indeed be happening in our country. I don't think we should sit on those laurels, but I do think OCIA numbers and things, you're starting to see something is emerging.
Yeah, you can see it in the horizon. Yeah, you can feel the momentum.
It does seem like the John Paul II new springtime.
Yes,
that may be coming. And there's a lot of people that have sacrificed and worked hard, including the people in Legatus, right? Our business leaders, the people running these companies. that are part of that story.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so thrilled to be a part of it, because even as I think about entrepreneurialism and how that's needed in the church and what that looks like in fields of nonprofit ministry, the work we're doing with the revival, it's amazing to me the number of folks in Legatus who have mentored those people who had those seed ideas, who have been in those conversations with me to help them because they've been there, done it. There's no other group in the country that has those Catholic entrepreneurs, business leaders, founders that can speak into what is needed for this revival than like the Legatus leaders. And that I think
that's a beautiful thing about Legatus is, especially when you see the transformation happen in what I would call, Catholic CEOs that are on the fringe,
right,
that come in, and Tom Monahan talks about attracting them with, great speakers and really exclusive events, and then zapping them with spirituality so that they can then go out, really be those legati,
Yes.
those ambassadors. Right. St. Paul calls us to be ambassadors for Christ, as if God is working through us. And to see the change happen in a lot of these members that then want to go out and either start new apostolates or get behind, apostolates that are, speak to their hearts. I want to talk, though, a little bit about when you launched OSV Institute. It came to a halt for you in a big way. And it was COVID, but it was more so your experience with COVID. Yeah. Talk us through what transpired, because a lot of us kind of were seeing it third hand, as Melissa was updating us through, right, Facebook posts and updates of your, walk us through what happened.
Yeah, right. So you heard about my intellectual conversion to the Eucharist, and this is sort of my heart conversion to the Eucharist. When COVID happened, I got deadly sick. I was taken to the hospital, was struggling to breathe.
This was late 2020?
And November of 2020. I remember that because the same day I went in the hospital was the same day that the bishops took the vote on the National Eucharistic Revival. I learned later.
Wow.
And so I'm in the hospital, and they did X-ray, and they said, this is pretty bad. It's one of the worst cases we've seen. We're going to need to intubate you and sedate you. Now, as a lifelong asthmatic, I thought, well, okay, that might be short. It turned out my total sedation intubation was 45 days.
Wow. Meaning you were intubated and you couldn't speak for 45 days.
I was
and were unconscious
45
in a
days.
Forced coma, basically.
Forced coma for 40 days. It took that long for them to try to get COVID out of my system. They did, about 2 weeks in, wake me up to see if I had brain functioning for about 3 days. In that time, I got sepsis. My kidneys just shut down, and I got pneumonia. And they told Melissa, he's worse now than when you brought him in. We're going to need to put him back under, which we can talk about later. That moment became a trigger for me later when I was actually woken up. And then for that next few weeks, it was sort of a fight, because their concern was his organs are going to continue to fail. The kidneys were just the beginning. They would protonate me, which means they put me on my stomach for 18 hours a day, and they stopped moving my limbs, because every time they did, my blood oxygen would drop too low.
Wow.
As I laid there, I lived in a dream state. They call it ICU delirium. So for that 45 days, not only was I couldn't move, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything, I also lived a different life in a dream world.
That you remember?
That I wasn't supposed to remember, but I do, right? And so they say they give you amnesia medicine, but I remembered, which made my coming out of sedation even more confusing from a mental standpoint.
So looking back or thinking back, you remember being sedated and kind of just paralyzed?
Yeah, I don't. I remember the dream world. Some of these things I share are what people told me, in terms of this happened or that happened. My wife then did a novena to St. Jude, started it on a national level, and everybody, it seemed to me, as I saw when I woke up, and the pictures and the prayers and the cards, People were praying for me all over the country, including my Legatus brothers and sisters and friends, our the men's and women's forum, my Legatus chapter. They were so great to my family that they cared for them. This was COVID when no one would go into the homes. So my wife would put our laundry on the porch. We had 5 kids. My wife was sick because we all had gotten COVID. She put it on the porch, and Legatus folks would come and pick it up and do the laundry and drop it back off. This was because it started in November. I wasn't there for Christmas. Legatus, our Legatus small forums, they provided the presents that year for my children, did all the shopping for my wife. Matter of fact, when I eventually arrived back at a forum after I was well, could barely speak, I told my guys, you guys are killing me because you bought better presents for my wife than I normally buy. You set a precedent.
I had heard that the story about them buying you your kids' Christmas presents. That is like just. I
mean, that for us, Legatus isn't just a something that we go to as a date night, which people talk about, or to learn our faith and to learn how to be ambassadors. It's our family. I mean, the Legatus people for us and our chapters are. We're so honored to be a part of it.
Well, community, right? Community is so important.
We care for each other. We love each other.
Every walk in life.
And they were tremendous for Melissa and to care for my family. But when I woke up then, to skip forward a little bit, when I woke up, I then woke up very slowly. I couldn't know what was real and not real. I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't move my arms. I was trached, so I couldn't talk. Because you have to put a talking valve in, I learned. And they said, they don't know if I have brain functioning. So they give me this board to see if I could write a message on it. They gave me a pen. The message comes and I write on there, how much is this costing me?
Is that really, that was
first
thing?
And they said, I think he's going to be okay. I think he's there.
Spoken like a true CEO.
True CEO. I'm looking around all these machines, and they said, I was like, anyway, how much is this costing? And they laughed and said, I think he's going to be okay. But now it was a fight to how do I get home? It took me 45 more days to relearn how to walk, to relearn how to talk, to learn how to swallow, to learn how to eat, to really try to figure out what is the real world and the dream world. Crazy to talk about. Where do I work? Do I work at these places? What do I currently do? It was strange. I remember telling my wife I no longer work at OSV. She goes, where do you work? I said, I work for the bishops, work for the USCCB, which turned out to be true later, which was sort of funny. But one of the things that I learned as so people are changing me and people are removing your clothes and washing you and feeding you. I'm completely helpless and I'm completely silent for the first time in my life, right? And I think most of those times in those moments of sacrifice, we think of suffering. We think of unite our suffering with Jesus on the cross. And of course we should, right? Yeah. He took death and suffering and turned it on its head, right? He makes the profane sacred. And the cross, carry your cross. But one of the things that occurred or happened for me was I came to understand what I'm going through is Jesus in the Eucharist in the Tabernacle, who also needs people to move him, who also needs people to come talk to him, who is complete, and again, this full circle moment of a Protestant, you think Jesus loves us so much, he died for us, of course. And then of course we know that he rose for us. That's what gives us, it's the foundation of our faith, Easter.
Yeah.
That's enough, right? In the Catholic context, no, he goes the next step. He not only wants that, he humbles himself so much, he empties himself so much, he becomes the very food that we eat. Yeah. He takes on the appearance of bread and wine. And not only that, he could have said, you know what, and I want you all to consume me after Mass. And that's it. No, we put him in a tabernacle and he waits on us. And he waits for us. And for me, it was this Eucharistic moment when I say a conversion of my heart.
It's a beautiful analogy that we have to exercise Jesus just like the doctors, the nurses had to exercise you. Why don't we with Jesus in the tabernacle? We can't just leave him there to sit.
Right. Why don't we visit? right? There's a book called The Abandoned of a Saint on the abandoned tabernacles of the world. And so it was interesting for me when I then learned what was real and not real. And I got up on my feet and there was questions, would he walk again or talk again? And I the Lord provided. As an FYI, my wife who did that novena into St. Jude, every day of that novena, I got better and better and better to the last day as they were around the hospital saying the last prayer of that novena is when I woke up.
And you even had Bishop Rhodes come and celebrate Mass.
He did.
You, right? Like,
he is an amazing man. And
it says a lot about you, but also about him. But
he showed up on a Sunday, I remember, because everybody was busy in my room, my hotel room, my hospital room. They're busy around cleaning. And I said, well, what are you guys doing? And they said, you have a special guest coming. And I said, well, who is he? And they said, the bishop is coming to visit you. Now, I'm in Ohio. I'm not in Indiana. In Indiana. They drove me during this period 2 to 3 hours away to get me into Ohio because they would allow more visitors.
Oh, because of the COVID restrictions.
Because of the COVID restrictions. So my wife got me out of Indiana, put me in Ohio. My family's from Columbus, and it allowed people to come be a part of it. It was a Catholic hospital there in Lima, Ohio. So this bishop had to drive.
Wow.
It wasn't like I would just go next door. Yeah. And it was Sunday morning at 11 o'clock.
Like he's got nothing else to do.
And they said, we've never had a bishop come visit us before. So they were, and I said to them, well, they don't just clean the room. I need you to clean me up. And I'm not going to greet the bishop in this bed. Get me in that chair. Yeah. They put me in a chair and I had really not sat up much yet. And he comes in, was just a generous, beautiful man. And he says, Jason, this is the last day of Christmas. It was the baptism of the Lord. And you haven't had Mass. And I'm going to say Mass for you here in this hospital.
Wow.
And he brought his alb, he brought his chasuble, he brought his stole. And I said, Bishop, I just learned how to swallow. He said, I'll give you a little host. And I said, I don't think I can speak the words. He said, you speak them silently. I'll do it all. I'll do all the prayers. Now, candidly, I thought, okay, this is going to be like a daily Mass.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting there and not
20 minutes
I should be in that bed.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
And he no way. This was the full thing, homily and all. It was amazing. And so afterwards, I asked him, I said, Bishop, do you want to stay a little bit? Can I ask them to put me back in the bed? Yeah. They did. He came over and I said, can I ask you some questions? And I said, I would like to know, how do I offer my suffering in this hospital up to the Lord for others? How do I apply these graces to others? And he gave just this great catechetical moment with me at the bedside and say, give them to Mother Mary and she'll distribute them to those intentions. And so from thereafter, what was occurring in that hospital room is people around the world would now send in intentions. And that too helped me get up on my feet.
So share a little bit more about that. Like how, because obviously in my situation or a lot of our situations as presidents, CEOs, we go through our day. Yeah. Every day is the same. But there is a lot of intentionality that we can offer up, as you said. There's, growing up in a Catholic family, there was always the offer it up.
Yeah.
That was always the catchphrase. But what does that actually mean? And what did he share in terms of how we could do that?
Yeah, actually, right. So I heard those things, offered up. I don't know what that means. Yeah. Here's this convert kid. Now I'm sick. I'm in suffering. How do I apply graces that I might be getting because of this suffering to other people? And that's what I wanted to do. And the thought was, or how I was taught was basically, I took the intentions, I read the intentions, and I offered them up to Our Lady, who then offered them to the Lord, and that she was able to apply those graces. And so I would simply sit in my bed. It's all I could do. Right. My therapy could only last so long per day. And so my wife would collect the prayer intentions, and I would sit there and pray them and say, Lord, if I get any graces, I'm not presumptuous enough to know, if I get any graces for any of this, please offer it for these sets of intentions. Please give it. Our Lady, please distribute these to these folks. The other thing that was happening is I became known as the miracle man in these hospitals. So people would share their life stories with me. I couldn't really talk, but they would. and they would tell me about their situations.
So you learned the art of listening?
Art of listening. Yeah, they would share. And then I asked my wife, remember when we had those rosaries blessed by the Holy Father, could you bring them? And then as they would share, I'd hand them a rosary. And right, we can evangelize in our suffering. We can evangelize in our moments of silence.
Have you ever reflected on the last years of JP2's life and thought maybe that was what he experienced?
Exactly.
As you're saying that?
I think he was teaching us, right? I think we think of evangelists. I would argue candidly, this is a whole nother hour of conversation, that we might be moving a little bit away from, I would call it evangelical Catholic moment, more to a Eucharistic mysticism moment in the church, much more of a, and I think because of that, what I think we are now being taught is I think we have these visions of an evangelist, of an apologist who knows their faith, who can speak it intelligently, and certainly that's what we want. We think of the street corners or the knocking on the doors. But I do think St. John Paul II was showing us, he was not only teaching us how to die and die well, but he was teaching us how to live and how to share our faith through those moments. And from a guy who likes to talk and explain and teach, it was really hard to sit there in a bed and listen to people struggling in their cases of marriage and to really just offer that to the Lord and let him do the work. And what's been so beautiful about the revival and the pilgrimage and the Congress is to watch the church lead with the Eucharist and get out of the way.
Yeah.
And to see the fruits and the results of that have been tremendous.
Which was emblematic in Bishop Cousins in Indianapolis leading that Eucharistic procession around the streets of Indy and everybody following him, just the way it should be, right? Our Eucharistic Lord.
And I think if anyone sees it, and you can see it on video, even the first evening to me where you go to a lot of different events and it's a speaker coming out or an MC coming out, the very beginning of that Congress, Bishop Cousins, after all this pilgrimage and around the country, bring the Blessed Sacrament, put him on the altar in the middle to watch all the lights go off in the stadium, everybody focus in the middle. And he says something to the effect of, Jesus, we wanted to give you the first word.
Yeah.
And the power of that.
Yeah.
In the silence.
I mean, to be in Lucas Oil Stadium with 60,000+ people, your closest friends, and all the lights. I mean, I look now at events that I've seen at the stadium, whether it be football games or whatever, and I think that's where we had our Eucharistic Lord, and it was jam-packed. Jam-packed.
And you could hear a pin drop in that moment, right? As they're all adoring the Jesus and the Blessed Sacrament. And right, but the idea of leading with Jesus in the Eucharist, right? Starting with John chapter 6, starting with bringing people to Jesus at Mass and the adoration is having powerful effects, more so than any talk or speech or thing that we could do. Now, those are all needed and necessary, don't get me wrong. But I do think that there is something emerging in how we evangelize and what that looks like that is incredibly powerful.
Well, so I've got a few questions on a business perspective and family perspective.
Sure.
What changed? I mean, you managed people before with OSV and in your roles with Catholic Charities and other, you manage people.
Right.
How did your management style change with dealing and interacting in your relationships with people from before you had COVID to then now, your life flashed before your eyes and you go through this experience and now at the NEC? Tell me a little bit about how that changed, and then what could we take as those of us that haven't been through your experience? What could we learn from that?
Yeah, two things that come to mind. I would hope that the way I treat people didn't change a whole lot, but I would say my attitude about life, and obviously near death would always do that, right? I would feel like I'm less feeling like I need to climb some ladder, or I need to get to the next rung of something, or I need that, right? I shouldn't be here. I feel more free and liberated to just say, Lord, what do you ask of me? What am I doing today? Let every moment be your will, right? And that's so hard for us, especially as men, right? We're we're thinking of this, that, and the other. We're thinking of reputations. We're thinking of the next thing we want to accomplish, the next goal. But to be a lot more docile and to do his will and not ours has definitely been a lesson for me. The second one I would share, and you sort of allude to it earlier, and that's why I want to go back to it, is the daily grind, I think, can wear us down. Yeah. I came to learn when I was trying to figure out what is real and not real, right? Philosophically, you see, are we living in a dream? And I was literally trying to figure that out. What came to me was, in my dream state, there was no ordinary. In my dream state, there was no me using the bathroom or washing dishes or doing the chores or doing right? I think, especially from a legatus standpoint, these are very accomplished people who are doing things that they never dreamed they would do and are in rooms that they never dreamed they would do. And the extraordinary becomes often the thing, the adrenaline rush, the things that we're doing. But what I learned is I found what was real in understanding the ordinary, everyday task and the things that we're grinding away at that seem repetitious are also what makes the life most beautiful. So I think sometimes if we think about it as Lord is calling us just to take the next step, not feel like we have to know what's 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. He's asking us just take the faithful next step. You might not be asked to do the big things. Yeah. And we need to be comfortable and live in that ordinariness. And there's beauty in that I came to read. And so I think for me, I lead differently probably because of these two things. Things roll off of me differently than they did before. I have a better understanding of what is important and not. Mm-hmm. But
you don't let the small stuff upset you as much.
No, I'm like, my gosh, do you know? And then it's funny though, even I would share this story and now this will go public. And, but even going to take on this role after Tim Winkowski, who's a big shoes to fill, amazing man, did a great work. And to try to figure out after 2024, does this go forward? And at our Sunday Visitor, it's a rather stable job and work that I'm enjoying. To leave all of that and say at an age that I'm older to go do another startup. I remember asking my wife after praying about it, do you think I should go do this? And she said, well, what's your hesitancy? And I said, well, I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? I said, we have 5 kids. They're this age. There's stability here. There's da-da-da here. And she said, Jason, of all people who should trust the Lord, it's you. He brought you back to life, right? Like of all people who shouldn't be here, you of all people should be able to just go and trust the Lord. And from my wife, who knows our finances and kids and things, to say that, I said, okay. Yeah. I'll go. We'll just go do it.
What do you find yourself doing more of or less of as a husband and father after this experience?
I probably, as a husband, okay, that's a fantastic question. You ask a question. You're good at this. Yeah. One of the things that happened when I was told I was going to be intubated and sedated was I called my wife and I said, they're going to intubate me and sedate me. And she knew this might be fatal. And she said to me on the phone, I need you to write 5 messages through text to each one of our kids saying goodbye.
Oh my gosh.
Now they're going to sedate me in like 15 minutes. So I had to go and text 5 messages. Now, what I was doing is I was thinking not only of the things I wish I would have said, but the things that they're now going to read this on a wedding day that I might not be at, or when they graduate. And how do you say all that in 144 words?
15 minutes divided by 5, you got 3 minutes to write these texts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
So I survived. And my wife said, I wrote those texts, right? And she said, yeah. And but they stunk. That's what she told me. They're awful. They were awful. And I haven't actually read them since. But that's a lesson now, that now I don't wait to tell my kids every day, if I can, that I love them. I don't wait to try to pass on a word of wisdom, hopefully not in an obnoxious way. But now that moment is redefined now, the appreciation. And when I first got out, my kids wouldn't let me out of their sight. I mean, if I coached basketball, they were right there next to me on the sideline. Especially they were little, my little boys. And so it's changed. The other thing that's changed in our house, believe it or not, in a strange way, we're not afraid to talk about death at the dinner table. They saw daddy almost die. And so it's put their lives in perspective too, in terms of, in a lot of ways. And we're not afraid to sort of talk about end of life and those conversations. I would hope I'm more patient. That could just be getting older with them. But I'm less concerned with them in terms of some of the career aspirations or I'm more concerned with the faith aspect of their life, and are we leading them to become saints?
When you look back, do you, this is kind of a weird question, but are you thankful to God for the experience of going through COVID?
I am.
To be able to prepare you for your role in life today as leading this National Eucharistic Congress?
I don't think I could have led it without it.
Yeah.
I don't think I would understand leadership as self-emptying and humility first if I didn't go through that and understand Jesus in that aspect of the Eucharist. I think, in another way, I have a special needs daughter that's now 18 who has cerebral palsy and autism and doesn't speak. And she's developmentally like 1.5 years old. And I'm grateful for the COVID experience too, because for the first time in my life, I could relate to her. I could understand what she does every day. I could understand that experience. And I don't think I would trade that for the world.
I think that's a whole nother podcast we could talk about in terms of that experience and relationship. But Jason, thank you for sharing your story of bringing the Eucharist to life and how you've lived that Eucharistic life for more years than you thought you would. So thank you for sharing it.
Mark your calendars, 2029, next Congress.
2029. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.